Hi, this is Elaine Ginn, and today we're going to be talking about perception or deception, how your take on things can make or break your dreams. In the previous video, Pet Peeves and Perception, we laid the basic groundwork for this, and today I want to expand on that, give you some more examples, and give you some tips on how you can monitor your own perceptions and your own decisions, and see how those affect your life. So did you realize that you make over 500 conscious decisions every single day? And there are thousands more that you make subconsciously. They're based on ideas that are in your subconscious mind that you're not even aware of. Just as an example, have you ever been driving someplace and you were thinking about something else while you were driving, and you arrived at your destination and thought, I don't even remember going over the bridge. How did I get here? But your subconscious mind took over and made all of those turning decisions and stopping decisions for you. Well, it's time to be aware. Most of us, all of us, let's face it, all of us are programmed when we are children by the things we're told, and the experiences that we have, the observations that we make, and all of those ideas are immediately registered in our subconscious mind because we were too young at the time to make the decision not to let that be admitted to your subconscious mind. The subconscious mind doesn't make judgments, it just soaks stuff up. And when you were very little, you had experiences that made you believe a certain thing about the world, and a certain thing about your family, and a certain thing about the way things work. For instance, you might have looked at the way your parents interacted, and that heavily informs your ideas about what a marriage is. Also, there are lots of other things, like maybe your daddy always used to read you the funnies or read you books, and you would cuddle up in his lap and it would feel so warm and comforting and secure. And because of that, you developed a great love of reading, and you've always been a big reader in your life. Or maybe, as Don Miguel de Ruiz explains in his book, The Four Agreements, you had an experience like this little girl whose mommy came home one day and she had a terrible headache and she was so tired, and her mommy laid down on the sofa. And this little girl wants to cheer up her mommy, so she's singing and dancing because she just feels so good and she wants her mommy to be happy like she is. But her mommy wasn't happy. And in fact, her mommy asked for her to be quiet so that her mommy could get some rest. But the little girl didn't know from headaches and being really, really tired after a day of work. So this little girl continues to sing and dance to cheer up her mommy. And her mommy was not being cheered up. And after she had had enough of it, she said, would you just shut up? You have a terrible voice. And this poor little girl, she was so crushed by that. And she just absorbed what her mom had told her because she knew that her mommy always told her the truth, and that what came in from her mom was automatically accepted. And so this little child hardly spoke from that point on until she got to college, because she thought she had a horrible voice and she didn't want other people to know that. And so she only spoke very quietly, or she didn't speak. And for all of those years, she did not express her feelings or her ideas. And she didn't interact with other people because she had lodged into her subconscious mind that she had a horrible voice. And I doubt that she did. And I don't think her mother had any clue what she was doing. She was so distracted by her headache and her fatigue. But those things happen, and we make decisions based on those things and ideas that have just been crammed into our subconscious minds all of our years. So we need to be aware. That's what it's all about, becoming more and more and more aware, and raise our level of consciousness as we go through life so that we can make smarter perceptions and smarter decisions. And that's what it's all about. Now, it's well known that in an automobile accident, if there are witnesses standing around, they will be interviewed, and often they give disparate accounts of what happened. One might say, well, it was a blue minivan, and someone else could say, no, that was a white sedan. And someone might say, that guy ran the stop sign. And another person might say, he didn't run the stop sign. So each of us makes observations based on what's going on inside us and not necessarily what factually happened out in the world. So even when we agree on things, if everybody said, yes, it's a blue van, and the guy didn't stop at the stop sign, then we've got lots of interpretations that we could make about the real so-called facts. And we talked about that a little bit in Pet Peeves and Perceptions when we talked about the littering incident and how many different ways people could perceive what happens when someone tosses a used coffee cup from a fast food joint out of the car. There are lots of ways to react to that or to anything that happens to you. Now, lots of decisions come up all through your day. We talked about 500 of them are conscious. And some of those relate to your relationships, some to your health, some to your professional life. And all of those things are important. Everything you say and do and think is important because they all have energy and they all affect the rest of the world. Now, in your business life, you might have some decisions or some incidents, let's say, that happen during the day. Maybe someone calls and cancels an appointment, and you give a sales pitch, and it is rejected outright. Or maybe manufacturing issues or other details come up like that. For some people, that could just make it a terrible day. And I'm sure you've seen people who you've asked, how'd your day go? And they'd say, oh, it was awful. And other people could have had the very same day and said, I learned a lot today, or I had a good day. If someone cancels an appointment, some person could get their feelings hurt because this person didn't think that they were important enough to keep their appointment. And someone else says, oh, wow, now I have an extra hour and a half that I can work on that project I've been wanting to get done. And if someone rejects your sales pitch, some people are going to get their feelings so hurt. And somebody else says, now I know what doesn't work. And the next time I go out there, I'm going to be stronger and better. So it's all a matter of how you perceive an incident and how that affects your day. And it affects your decisions, and your decisions are going to affect your success in life, whether it's in a relationship or your business or your health. And we haven't talked much about health, but it affects everything that you do. So as you're becoming more conscious, keep these things in mind. Is this going to serve me? Is this important to me today? Or is this based on something I've been carrying around for years that no longer serves me? I want to share with you an incident that happened to me years ago. After my first book was published, I got my courage up and wrote a second one. And my agent called one day and said to me, you have a contract offer on this new book. It was called The Mercedes Scar. So I was pretty happy about that. And I looked into the offer. She, gave me the details on the offer, and I looked at the publisher and the other book that was the first book that was in the series that mine was to become a part of. Now, this was a scientific publisher. That's great, except I thought, in my perception, I didn't want a scientific book. I wanted a mainstream Barnes & Noble bookstore book. But this was a scientific publisher. So I thought, well, I'll go to the library and I'll check out this book that's the first one in the series. Well, it was a small book, and it was bound in black leather, and it looked pretty boring. And inside it had lots of stuff that I couldn't begin to understand. And so just in my stupidity, I rejected that offer to have my book published. I look back on that now and I think, hey, that would have looked great on my resume to see that I had had a book published by a scientific publisher as well as mainstream publishers. That makes me more versatile, more valuable to a future publisher. Well, now that book is still not published, and it is because I jinxed it with that decision. I was not perceptive enough to see the possibilities in having my book published excuse me, by that publisher. I would make a very different decision today. So, as you become more aware, I want to give you 3 tips on things that you can do to really look at yourself and how you're making decisions and perceptions. The first one, I want you to go back in your life and think about a time when you did or said something that someone else totally misperceived. Maybe you gave someone a compliment and they said, "What do you want from me now?" Or maybe you did something that someone totally blew out of proportion and they made it such a big deal when it wasn't a big deal, and they looked at you differently than they had before and you felt bad because of that. How did it feel to be misperceived? Now, the second thing is I want you to go into your life and look at a time when you misperceived something and made a bad decision because of that perception. And how did that impact your life? And how has it changed your career? And it could have been something in a relationship, or it could have been a professional decision, or a parenting decision, any kind of thing that you made that you misperceived what someone did, and that has led to some problems for you. And the third thing I would like to do is invite you to be ever vigilant, especially this next week, about the decisions that you are making. What are you basing them on? Are you basing those decisions on ideas that no longer serve you? Or are you basing them on new facts and new information? Are you getting enough information? Are you making snap judgments? Are you jumping to conclusions? And is that getting you where you want to be? Perhaps it is, but lots of times it isn't. So I'm encouraging you right now to be very careful about what you perceive, how you perceive, and the decisions you make based on those perceptions. I wish you a ton of success and happy perceiving. Thank you for listening.